Welcome to Runick Morganite. Now, Runick is probably a deck you're pretty familiar with. It's very popular in Master Duel and decently common in the TCG. But a newly revealed OCG card in Cyberstream Access is definitely interesting for the deck, even if it might not be your first choice. That is Time Rending Morganite, a spell card that actually permanently affects your ability to play for the entire of Duel. But it has some very strong effects for Runicks that definitely make it a lot better, if you're willing to build around it. Now, what exactly does Time Rending Morganite do? Well, it is a normal spell card, which reads, apply these effects for the rest of this duel. You cannot activate monster effects in the hand, draw 2 cards instead of 1 for your normal draw during your draw phase, and you can conduct up to 2 normal summons or sets each turn, not just one. Then, the second effect is that you can banish this card from your graveyard and discard 1 Time Rending Morganite. This turn, your opponent cannot activate monster effects when you normal summon a monster. Now, for the purposes of Runick, you really only care about the second effect, which is drawing 2 cards of your draw phase instead of 1. And the relevant reason why is because one of Runick's big issues is in order to make any kind of comeback or starting your play, you need 2 Runick spells in your hand. And if your whole board is wiped and you're out of resources in the hand, drawing 1 card for your draw phase means you can't do anything. But with Morganite's effect, you can actually draw 2 each draw phase, which means you can theoretically reset up the entire Runick end board over and over each turn, by getting the field spell in the field every turn, and because Morganite is permanent, you can constantly do that. The Runick as an engine also has enough draw power to draw you into Morganite pretty quickly, and the effect to not be able to activate monster effects in the hand is kind of inconvenient, but the deck didn't run too many hand traps, at least it doesn't need to, as all of its spells basically function as hand traps. The 2 normal summon effect is neat, but Runick doesn't really have any monsters, and would maybe normal summon something like a Majesty themed once per turn. But that drawing 2 effect is incredibly strong and worth the small sacrifices. As for the rest of the deck, I'm sure you're probably familiar with Runick, but if you're not, I'll just very quickly go over how it works. It's an archetype full of quick play spell cards that have 2 modes. Either they summon a Runick from your extra deck, or they activate an effect and then banish cards off the top of your opponent's deck, which is a specified amount. For example, Runick Tip can either search a Runick card from your deck to your hand, and then banish 1 card off the opponent's deck, or special summon a Runick from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. The other Runicks is Destruction, which destroys a spell trap, Freezing Curses, which negates an effect, Flashing Fire, which destroys a special summon monster, Slumber, which allows a monster to not attack, but has protection, Smiting Storm, which just banishes cards, Dispelling, which randomly discards a card from your opponent's hand when they search, and Droplet, which allows your opponent to draw a card, but then you banish 4. And if you're wondering about ratios, well, Droplet is mostly here just an extra name to summon from the extra deck. Its main effect kind of is terrible. Dispelling is similar, but its effect isn't too bad. Smiting Storm is good for really closing out games if you're really going to deck out, but you don't need many. Slumber is very convenient for a pure Runick list like this, and it can even protect cards like Majesty's Fiend. Flashing Fire, Freezing Curses, and Destruction are your main ways of interruption are just strong, and Tip is self-explanatory. And while the whole deck is based on the field spell, which lets you activate these from your hand on your opponent's turn, and when you activate 1, you can target up to 3 in your graveyard, put it on the bottom of the deck, and draw that same number of cards. Now, I'm not running the continuous spell if you're wondering, because I feel like it's a win more card, and I don't think it's very good. As for what the fusions do, Gary can't destroy by card effects, and unless you recycle non-quick play Runick spells, then when destroyed by battle, you can destroy a card on the field. This is very nice for the grind game and kind of slowing your opponent down to stop them from just outright killing you. Then I'm running 3 Hugin, which is the way you search the field spell, as when it's summoned you can discard a card to search the field spell, and then if whenever card you control be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish this card you control instead. Which is very good, because even if your opponent, say, activates a Harpy Feather Duster on your field spell and you don't control Hugin, if you chain a Runick Quick Play spell, you can summon Hugin and then protect it at the end of the chain. Its other effect is that if this card in the field is destroyed by battle or card effect, return it to the extra deck. Pretty nice for stalling out the games. Then I'm running 1 Munin. I'm not running the continuous spell The Search, but Munin at least gives you targeting protection, and it lets you to gain life points and has a decent defense stat. It's a nice one of, and the extra deck has almost infinite space. As for the other cards I'm running, well, on the top of the extra deck, I'm running a bunch of super poly targets and some random links. The deck doesn't really need anything in an extra deck, so you can run whatever you want. I'm running 3 Fenrir, as it's a solid card to get board presence, especially in this deck which can't really run hand traps. It's good for going second, as it doesn't activate any effects in your hand. I'm running 2 Majesty Fiends, as they are good for stalling your opponent, slowing their game plan down. You could run 3, but I feel like this deck draws so many cards, it doesn't really need to, that might be too bricky. I'm also running 3, there can be only 1. Very strong Floodgate, which basically doesn't conflict with the deck at all. Same with Dimensional Fissure, very good Floodgate, deck doesn't mind it at all. I'm also running 1 Day of Peace, as it prevents you from taking battle damage and lets you draw cards. 2 things the deck really appreciates. Call by the Grave stops hand traps, which is very nice. And that's it for pretty much the generics. So for an example of what Morganite can actually bring to the deck, this is a hand of Kashtira Fenrir, Morganite, Runick Tip, Runick Golden Droplet, and Freezing Curses. And to start off with, I will summon Fenrir and use its effect to search the kind of deck thin and just get a monster on the field, because you must control the monsters to summon Fenrir. Then I'll activate a Runick spell, in this case Golden Droplet, discarding from my hand Freezing Curse, or first summoning Runick Wings, then discarding Freezing Curse to search the field spell. I will activate the field spell, then use Tip to search a Runick card, in this case I will search Freezing Curses, then use the field spell's effect to recycle 3 into the deck and draw 3. Then here I can activate Morganite, and I'll tribute summon Majesty's Fiend. So this is a pretty standard Runick board, and let's just say the next turn plays through, but then on the next draw phase, you draw 2 cards. And that's basically all Morganite does for Runick, but it's a very good effect. Lets you really get the grind game going, and make sure you don't run out of resources, which is something Runick can sometimes do, and it can make you come back very easily. So in conclusion, Morganite doesn't really revolutionize the deck, but I feel like it's very much worth looking into. It lets the deck actually recover and it makes it less fragile. Its downsides don't really hurt the deck, and it just makes it feel a little bit more consistent, a little bit more comfortable to run completely pure, and it's a nice option to look into when Cyberstorm Access hits the TCG. And that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and feel free to leave any feedback you have in the comments, and subscribe if you want to see more in the future.